Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, and all our attendees. And it's time for us to move forward towards our next discussion. It's interesting to see how so many of our speakers joined us to share some really interesting observations, as well as some new concepts across diverse topics. And with that, what we're going to do is actually move forward to another pertinent topic as we talk about securing the new normal. Most importantly, how to protect your cloud, workforce, and assets in the post-pandemic world. I'm sure this is a very important question that's on everybody's minds, and it's time to gather answers from our panelists. So first up, let me introduce someone who's going to be moderating the session for all of us. We have with us Mr. Satyanandan Atyam, CRO, Tata AIG General Insurance Company Limited. In fact, he's an enterprise risk management leader, having more than 18 years of global experience across various industry domains in multiple geographies. So Mr. Satya will be spearheading this panel discussion that features panelists such as Mr. Balram Choudhary, Vice President and CISO, ASK Group. In fact, he's a senior technology and security professional with 18 years of experience in the BFSI industry, developing customized IT solutions and ensuring cybersecurity. We're also joined by Mr. Raje, who's a director and CIO HealthAssure. He's a visionary senior leadership professional with in-depth knowledge and more than 23 years of experience in successfully leading large organizations. Our next panelist is Mr. S.V. Sunder Krishnan, CRO, Reliance Nippon Life Insurance Company Limited. In fact, he's a result-oriented, innovative, values-driven leader with over 35 years of diverse experience. Our next speaker is Mr. Sudhir Kanvinde, CIO, The Supreme Industries Limited. He's also a seasoned leader who comes with a prolific experience of 30 years in various industries. And that leaves me with our final panelist, Mr. Sheikh J. Ahmed, Head Information Security and DPO, Mashreq Bank. He's a dynamic, boundary-pushing leader who comes with more than 25 years of cybersecurity and consulting experience. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to urge you all to keep your questions coming so that our session moderator will have them answered towards the end of the session after gathering as many insights as possible from the fellow panelists. So keep those questions coming. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our session moderator and our panelists. We'll get this session started in just a couple of seconds. Stay with us.
Welcome all delegates to this wonderful panel. I think we have a great panel here. I think rightly introduced by Kavya. We have the best of the industry minds from all the insurance and from all the domains of industry. And I will not take much time. And this interesting topic of securing the new normal. I think this is a big challenge for everybody. The COVID has given us new scenarios. And with these new scenarios, I think everybody has overcome a lot of challenges in the business. So the entire context of the discussion, I wanted to bifurcate into two sections for the benefit of the delegates, which would be a business environment and the security aspects. And the business environment, I think the question which I'd like to pop up is about the post-pandemic view, how the threats are changing. Now, the threats are definitely changing from protecting the assets, which could be an on-prem asset, a cloud asset, or an identity of a workforce. And the connection getting established outside the organization from a non-organization asset also. I think the entire scenario is quite rapidly changing because we are adapting a very different type of working culture, a very different type of way to do business. So I would not stop here. I would ask Sudhir Kanvinde, who is a Chief Information Officer of the Supreme Industries, of what his views are around this business environment which is changing and how he would provide his perspective in terms of how this would change and how they are changing as an organization around this. Sudhir, over to you, please.
Thank you, Satyanandan, and good afternoon, everyone. See, the pandemic and the consequent lockdown was beyond anyone's imagination. So it was a kind of disruption that was not on the horizon at all. The IT departments were not geared up for the entire staff to work from home. No doubt, COVID just accelerated the digitization process. See, earlier work from home was common for IT department, weekend support and everything, supporting at night. But in pandemic, the entire staff started working from home. Security and resiliency are shared responsibilities of everyone in the organization. So it is all about cooperation and coordination among all the departments and achieving synergies in operations. Behavior training is required for non-IT staff to get ready, buckle up for digital transformation. Now, information security is a strategic element business. It serves three main purposes: to protect your business, keep your data in your control, and make the most of your investments. Teams need clear visibility into entire environment to access maximum threats. So this helps with analytics, insights for real-time decision-making, and understanding long-term trends. Flexible controls enable rapid or even automated responses to threats that is required. It is important to protect the actual data on on-premises servers and hybrid cloud workloads. Secure and basically into secure networks where resources are held, and protect virtual desktop environment to support critical remote working teams. Back to you, Satyendra. You are on mute, Satyendra.
Yeah, thank you. So, Sudhir, I think the automated response is what you mentioned is a call of something which everybody would really like to, have something implemented in the organization. So this is something is a new idea which I would like to, highlight. And over to Sunder sir. I think Sunder Krishnan, who heads he's a chief risk officer with Reliance Nippon Life Insurance. I think the insurance industry domain and how the business threats are changing from a business environment perspective. Like to hear your views from you, sir.
Thanks, Satyan, and good evening or good afternoon to everyone. Like what Sudhir said, there is digital transformation that's on in most of the financial services companies. I think this began somewhere 5 years before the COVID strike. However, it didn't pick up much. There was a lot of research, a lot of innovations happening, but COVID accelerated it. And what has happened now is that the remote working, which was probably confined to IT, is now all pervasive. And we have some kind of a hybrid workforce working from various surfaces. So there is an increased attack surfaces due to remote connections. Added to this, there was lack of training to employees as to what to disclose and what not to, leading to many times disclosures that could be hacked later. And employees are now a part of spear phishing. And compared to 2019, the takeover attempts have increased by 31%, payment frauds have increased by 17%, mobile frauds have increased by 25%. So there is increase in attacks. Ransomware as a services upcoming threat to organization. I've been privy to one of the ransomware attacks, and it's really a hurdle in the sense that you find so many things coming up when you do a forensic audit of the environment. And you find that the hackers are there for quite some time, and we didn't detect that despite several controls. Protecting off-premises assets has become difficult as compared to on-premises assets due to employees working not from office, but from homes. And network security, VPN, using VPN, endpoint protection solution, process implementation, data loss prevention, and many other such solutions are used to access confidential information that can still be used. Somebody could click a photograph from home using camera. And so you need to have frequent disclosures being made, and also vigilance in terms of from cameras observing people in remote locations. So it calls for increased controls, increased investments, and therefore increased amount of security. So organizations now need to prepare for risks related to a hybrid work model, and probably zero trust solution is one of the ways to ensure access and identity management, wherein you ensure least privileges are given to employees, and it's more on resource-based and transaction-based. So a new scenario, new challenges, new investments are required, culture has to be improved, and people are getting together. And people have seen attacks, and therefore there is increased monitoring also, and increased investments being made. There is a change in the checklist of how do you do secure work from home, and regulators also thinking various strategies. In fact, regulatory inspections are happening remote. They don't come to premises. They're doing offsite premises audits or inspections. So there is a change, and I think people are gearing up to that. There is an increase in attacks, but again, the corporates or enterprises are monitoring that. And so it's a very interesting scenario from a business perspective. Over to Satya. I think he's dropped. So, let's come back. No. So I think the challenges are quite high in terms of how do you operate in such a challenging scenario, requiring cooperation, requiring attention of various resources, and also agility with people combined together. Over to you, Satyam.
Mute. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Sunder Krishnan, for highlighting this various points with regards to what is the exposure, typically what an organization has facing due to the changing threat environment post-pandemic. I think this also gives us a cues, in terms of adaptation. I think the adaptation towards cloud and how everybody is leveraging cloud. The business enabler for transforming the business, it has become a very, very big business enabler, and it has made more competitive because it becomes a competitive edge for any organization for a time to delivery. So how are the cloud first strategy helping the business to build agility and resilience for the future proofing the organization? I think this is an interesting subject which I would like Mr. Ninad to focus on, because the post pandemic, I think the adaptation of cloud is also increasing, and how the business environment is really changing and how they are adapting. Wanted Mr. Ninad to focus on that.
Thank you so much. I completely agree with my fellow panelists, Sudhir as well as Sunder. And thanks for having us here. Good afternoon, everybody. I guess there is a common sort of a slang which is going on nowadays. Who has brought in the digital transformation and the cloud strategy? Is it the CEO? Is it the digital head? Is it the CIO? Is it the CTO? But in my parlance, COVID has brought about the digital transformation in the global sort of field as of now. And from that perspective, I would want to kind of touch base on one aspect, which is we've all had and looked upon a specific traditional on-prem approach, right? The COVID transformation has brought about the cloud-first strategy, wherein every organization now is kind of dovetailing, reaching out to the cloud sort of environment and migrating their workloads from the traditional on-prem to the cloud environment, and rightly so, because the kind of resiliency, the kind of performance, the kind of agility that cloud brings us, it's mind-boggling, And one more aspect is when we talk about cloud, which is a public cloud, private cloud, hybrid cloud, data privacy and confidentiality comes into the prime importance. Right now, we come from the healthcare and insurance and pharma background, wherein data privacy is an absolute utmost importance. And how does one enable and maintain these kind of sort of resiliency? And that's where the cloud also helps. Nowadays, if we look at AWS, Azure, or any other cloud environment, it comes built in with all these kind of securities. However, having said that, there is much more that needs to be done as far as security and control and blockages are concerned. We need to kind of make sure that we control this environment with adopting newer and better technology and edge services as well. So definitely this cloud adaptation is absolutely required. And I think more and more organizations are leaning towards it. And those organizations who have not kind of looked into it, I would certainly recommend that they have to go in for that. Otherwise, these organizations probably are going to lack and trail, and other organizations are going to take over as such. So with that, I will take it back to the anchor Satya here. Over to you, Satyanandan.
Or-
The other aspect that I wanted to kind of also bring to the notice of this entire audience is, whilst we are migrating and turning over to the cloud, it is absolutely important that we build the entire zero trust environment. And the zero trust environment is something which is not new to us. It has been there for a long time. It's only the fact that the pandemic and the cloud environment has actually fast track this entire process of zero trust. And what do you mean by zero trust? In fact, the zero trust means that we should not go ahead and enable or activate any other ports, any other data services. First is don't trust anybody. Of course, our teachers and all have taught us to trust everybody. However, with this pandemic coming up and from a technology security standpoint, we shouldn't trust anybody. We shouldn't trust any device. We should kind of clamp down and then slowly but steadily open up activities and ports. So with that, I'll turn it back to Satyan.
So Ninath rightly pointed out, trust and verify. I think that is what you would propose, and what is something would everybody would adopt as a philosophy when you talk about converging to cloud. I think this is an interesting perspective. I think we would like to connect back to Sudhir. I think Sudhir, the way he gave the post-pandemic perspective of changing threats, and I think this is a right way to connect with him, saying that, okay, if at all you have a view where the changing threats have been handled by your organization and yourself, I think how do you see this cloud journey being adapted by the organization, and how this has become more of a future-proofing the business concept? So over to you, Sudhir. We would like to come back to you and hear your views on this.
Yes, Satya. See, it is difficult to achieve strategic objectives with aging technology. See, it puts a strain on network capacity, introduces new security concerns, and creates a need for better access control. So sluggish system performance and lack of effective collaboration tools lead to decline and productivity. So cloud first overcomes these issues. It allows remote users to access the functionality and the data they need to do their job from anywhere with an internet connectivity, VPN, and scale up basically. So I feel this is something we should follow. And I feel even one more everybody is missing in this is data archiving technique is underutilized in the industry. So it can also do a lot of solve data related concerns. Back to you.
Great. Thanks, Sudhir. I think the discussion where we were talking about the business environment and the technology aspect of security, which has to be leveraged upon, I think the important aspect is of using a cloud native solution or using a third-party solution. So now everybody is going with a multi-cloud journey. I think the important question remains that the cost of ownership, if at all we say the cost of ownership of a native cloud solution is low or a third-party solution is high, is it a right security strategy? Is it the right way of achieving security and compliance? I think this is an interesting thought process, which I think everybody as an information security manager or an IT manager is grappling with. Can we fall back on Mr. Balram, who has a great expertise in this area, to provide some views on that? Mr. Balram?
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Satya, and good evening to all panelists and delegates. So you must you have told the multi-cloud, and every panelist was saying cloud and there how to secure that, and you have asked the question, cloud native or cloud agnostic. So personally, if you speak that there are multiple cloud service providers, and we are the existence of the business. Business exists, and hence we exist. So let's say the business wants operational efficiency. They don't care about your security, because we are the escape port over there to ensure that you are full secure, and at the same time we should be having the fast connectivity. So while I'll go ahead and will say that we should be that cloud agnostic, not cloud native. I'm not prefer cloud native kind of environment. Rather, I prefer to have the cloud agnostic kind of environment. And you should be using some third-party tools to manage those. You should create some kind of orchestrations layer where you can manage every cloud, each and every instances, and at the same time you can provide that good cost saving, operational efficiency, and that the configuration drift which will take place due to the using only the cloud native solution. So Amazon will have something good in some different, that Google Cloud will have something good, and then Azure will have something good. So this is not that if you are working for the business, you should be start consuming all kind of cloud. The Salesforce will have something else. So everybody, every cloud service provider is having their own USP, and it's working fine. Now coming into place, how to ensure that we are securing all kind of environment. So yes, the pandemic has taken place today, and that they have shown everybody how the digital transformation should take place. On earlier days, the security tools and technology exist like VPN, SSL VPN, and IPsec VPN is secure. No. So earlier also the people were not working from home except the IT guys. Nowadays, 80% people is work from home. So how to ensure that we should be leveraging multi-cloud environment with a cloud agnostic environment for the business, and at the same time, we should be providing same approach and same network speed which that imply what we are getting from office. So we should create some kind of SASE approach. Nowadays, the people has talked about ZTNA, Zero Trust Network architectures. We will go beyond. So that Gartner has released recently, that's called SASE 2.0 approach, where they will provide operations efficiency so that the content delivery networks will be there. They will provide SDN, software-defined networking will be there. They will define the web secure gateway, your alternative to VPN, which will be secure. And then they will provide your DNS security. So main attack which happen on DNS, they will provide your email security. So these kind of environment we should be creating. The many of the threats which take place from the individual machine. So how to ensure that those machines is properly secure, and same time, vulnerability, Microsoft vulnerability is the humongous. Every 7 days, they will send you some patches. And this is your responsibility to ensure that how to patch, even they are working from home and some remote location. So this kind of approach will ensure that if we are going to use CDN kind of environment, this will ensure that my system is patched enough. And at the same time, we are having security. We are not going beyond that, but still the application which you are developing, an application which is being accessed by the browsers. Nowadays, the many threats which take place from the browser itself. Which kind of technology? How should we ensuring that we should be having some kind of a browser isolation tool, so that in case any malware attack is taking place, then and there they can isolate. That's the people nowadays say on the level, the micro segmentation and all. So this will the browser isolation is the one of the part of micro segmentation. They will come ahead. Now you have 100 of tools and technology implemented in your environment to safeguard your customer information. But at the same time, you have to manage how many threats are coming. It's a real time, it should be. So you should be having some kind of MDR, managed detections and response installed over all the technology, where you will feed your all the logs, and from there you will analyze and massage the data and log from where you are getting so many hits. It's a ransomware attack or something else. And then apart from that, we should be using threat intel kind of environment on the real-time basis, 24/7 by 365 days, where you will find it out new kind of threats. You have to create some kind of SOAR kind of platform. Automation itself, in the incident or vulnerability which you receive on the daily basis, 0-day basis, where definition is not available, how to ensure that we should be securing there and then and there. And then same time, because you cannot keep 100 of security professional to go, receive 100 of incident and go manually and fix that. You should be having some kind of tool so that you can automate the incident which is taking place on daily basis. And then we are good to go. My suggestions to be, if you are going in the cloud, we should be approaching and creating some framework that's supposed to be cloud agnostic in the nature. Thank you, Satya. Over to you.
Thanks, Mr. Balram. I think providing a very perspective, which is very important for anybody as a information security manager or IT security manager to really imbibe in terms of how exactly we should proceed. The very fact of the CD and the browser isolation, the concept which you mentioned, is the needs of the environment. I think coming to the sector, typically, you have challenges with regards to when you go to a different domain. Now we had Sunder Krishnan from insurance domain, and we have luckily Mr. Sheikh from a banking domain. And I generally perceive that, from a domain to domain, business domain perspective, that the challenges are changed a bit. The technology remains the same, but the challenges change because the adaptability and the acceptance of a cloud in a bank and an acceptance of a cloud in a manufacturing industry and an acceptance of onboarding to a cloud in a media company. So I think it will be quite different because the regulations are different, the data sensitivity is different, the data confidentiality is different, the ease of going to the cloud and the management intent to really leave the data, because the possessiveness of the data is also very important. Because typically when you go to BFSI organization or regulated organization, the possessiveness of the data to keep within the premises of secure or having confidence within their own of having data within their own premises is also a very, very big factor for adapting to the cloud. So I think not wasting much time, I would like to hear from Mr. Sheikh. Mr. Sheikh, your view around this multi-cloud journey and the making or mastering security and compliance through the cloud. How exactly do you think your organization is progressing, and overall from a generic perspective, how do you think the banking industry is progressing to this subject?
Thank you, Satya. First of all, good evening to everyone, and thank you for Kamikaze and organizers for giving this opportunity. Satya, in fact, the views expressed here would be more of a personal nature, not related to the organization where I am associated with right now, or any specific organization in the industry. So the journey to cloud due to new normal, as you rightly suggested, was become a priority around 2 years back when the pandemic has engulfed every one of us, including the corporates. And it became like kind of a cloud-focused journey, and everyone was on a rush to digitize and move towards cloud, so that like they are into the business as usual kind of a thing. And on the urgency to adopt the cloud journey, majority of the organizations has missed to realize that like there are some pitfalls on the transformation journey, and there were some instances where I do not want to put the companies or the like organizations which has actually faced this difficulty of facing the like I meant to say neglecting the security and facing the penalties and all. And on top of it, like the major thing which we all know, like in the urgency, we normally relax security and sometimes over see this minute like I say compliance issue. Like it is like to keep in business and to be in business would be the focus of the board. Naturally, every organization and the security and the chief risk officers predictions and forecasting around risk involved in not adapting to the framework and not adapting to the like I meant to say the security guidelines will fall behind. That's what every organization has seen, and that's what the practicality. There were some exceptions, there were some escalations, and there were some exceptional approvals to oversee and override the security. So that is what we all as a security practitioners probably might have faced this cornering due to the like I mean, urgency to migrate and urgency to be in cloud and project as we are normal and we are there in the field kind of a thing. So there is another thing like majority on the journey, we forgot that like who will take care of the like I mean, say the especially the penal causes in terms of like data exposures or in terms of like risk involved if something like incidental breaches happens. So this was the regulatory drawback also. It happened with the majority of the not only Indian companies but like as per a survey around 15% of global MNCs also faced this data leak and data breaches. And we all know like due to pandemic from Q2 of 2020, there is an increase of 65% increase of attacks over the like I say external facing assets of crown jewels of the organizations. These are the facts actually. Yeah, Satya, over to you. Thank you. Satya,
thanks for the insight. I think what is more important around moving to cloud. I think moving to cloud is one aspect of the decision making, but the configuration drift, which is a big risk for any information security manager or an IT manager, where you have so many dynamic changes happening on the cloud. You have multiple application teams working parallelly on multiple projects. The configuration continuously changes. Your baselines is goes for a toss. So the manageability on an on-prem environment sometimes seems to be more convenient than when we move to cloud. So this configuration drift is the biggest risk, which I do not see we as enterprise managers have been able to address it very, very accurately. For the very reason, the configuration drift itself is not measurable. The exposure itself is not known. We ourselves do not have new or compliance dashboards or risk dashboards, which actually project that this is the baseline we had configured. And because of these last 2 days of changes, your baselines have fallen down. So do we have, I don't think any of the industry leaders will acknowledge that there is a dynamic measurability of it, because even we do not have a clear visibility on this. If such is a big risk of cloud, and when you say mastering security and compliance is a theme which is critical in the post-pandemic world, where we are saying that every user, every employee is moving outside the organization, and the adaptability of cloud is increasing, how do you see we can handle this? And Mr. Balram, I wanted to come back to you. I think you had put a very, very good perspective around CDNs and browser isolations, a lot of technological solutions, a lot of technological priorities an organization should take. I wanted your views on this configuration drift, and how do you see it a risk, and how do you see the measurability around it?
So thank you again, Satya. So, that configuration drift, if I understand, it's nothing but misconfigurations while the people will make any change in the production environment and your UAT environment. And it's nothing but it's generally, it's not cloud, but again, if you are having in-house data center or in-house applications, the people follow. So then you can't believe that okay, CUA is coming. I need tomorrow this application should go live. There is no sanity, there is no SIT, there is no BAPT, there is no point closure, and I still CEO is asking, I will go live tomorrow. What will you do? Again, your existence of the business. Either you go and explain them, ki, sir, this is the problem. If I am going, then there's something goes wrong. The people will understand as and when you are getting hacked, you will be hacked due to this misconfiguration. So the misconfigurations always is there, but what we supposed to do nowadays, people are follow very good, the DevOps kind of environment and DevOps in security. And then lastly, I was telling that it depends upon organizations to organizations. So if you are a small organization and you are consuming only one cloud, then you can create a very good management layer, very good process for SDLC. Either you follow in-house and external wall and data center, the people should follow SDLC with proper version control. If you are not doing, you will get missed. Either you are doing in data center or you are doing in the cloud. So this misconfigurations will take place. So you have to follow better, very good change management practice. Otherwise, this is not going to be happen. Now, while automation is taking place, while you are consuming multi-cloud environment, and there is so Kubernetes, Docker is taking place, you develop somewhere, you implement somewhere, then this is mandatory. We should be having some kind of, that cloud agnostic tools, which can give us proper report, and they should be the proper tools for DevOps. And during development, they should be having some kind of automations. If the developer is writing some kind of big code, that should be cached out. At least 80% supposed to be filtered out then and there. And then you are going with the proper BA, PT, changing, and then going to production, then do the proper version control. Nothing will take place. It's changed organizations to organizations, man to man, and culture to culture in the organizations. Nothing else can be done. It has happened and repeated in the in-house private data center. It will get repeated in the cloud native. It will get repeated in the multi-cloud if you are not changing your culture, if you are not creating, and if the same is not being driven by board. If the board will drive, people will understand. If you are giving full right and responsibility to middle management layer, they will come and kill you. Oh, chhod do, kya hai? Nothing is there. I want to go tomorrow. So this kind of culture change is required, which is supposed to be driven from upstairs. Whatever InfoSec is saying, you have to follow, because information security is not an information security head responsibility, but it's the overall employee responsibility. So people, process, technology, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, everything is there. Be it cloud, private, hybrid, everything. So we have to change our approach to consume the thing. Thank you, Satya.
So I think very rightfully, Mr. Balram, you being a very prolific speaker, I think the way you have summarized, I would say stick to basics. You are in cloud, you are on-prem, it is stick to basic is what your philosophy is. Doesn't make a difference, you talk about configuration drift, or you give a terminology of misconfigurations of your, servers. End of the day, it is stick to basic is what you are.
Satya, only the 10 years back, people were so much scared to going on cloud. Oh, there will be, the data problem, data issue, regulatory is not ready. They are not giving me some kind of a stuff. If you are going to consume cloud, you have to follow this 10 step. Regulatory is inside. You are going to use cloud? Yes, you go and consume, but you have to ensure your PII information is supposed to be secure itself in cloud. They never tell you go and consume or not consume. So earlier people were, that scared. Then a SMAC has taken place. Social media availability, mobility, whatever you can say, then people have started consuming. Now the cloud benefit is coming nowadays. People are thinking, if I am having some kind of applications which 3 other company has gone and they have benefited from the commercially due to this application, and if I am not going to consume cloud, I will not get benefited. Then this is the business demand, and we have to go and consume the cloud. But how? Business ko kuch malum nahi hai. He will tell always, I want to pay or 2, but your process for doing BAPT, your process for configuring any kind of applications should be ready in the place, and automations for security automation I'm talking about, because always if you go to ask CNY, PwC and all kind of big champ, so I want to do the BAPT, always you will go, so BAPT will take itself for 15 days. So you have to automate certain things. You should not be only responsible if the people are thinking about to consume the cloud key only, that I will get this done BAPT. You have to automate BAPT as well.
Correct.
You have to in-house something. It's a depend upon organization to organization. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's the perspective. I think touching upon the business, I would like to come back to Mr. Sunder Krishnan. I think we were talking about the technology part of the controls. I think the entire the debate which should be from a regulatory standpoint of the data protection strategy. I think it's a right theme which Mr. Balram had touched upon, which I would like Mr. Sunder Krishnan coming from wearing a hat of a chief risk officer, getting sandwiched between the regulator, the business needs, and the security needs. I think this is the perspective which I think all the delegates would benefit, that if at all we are moving to cloud and we have a responsibility for data protection strategy, we have a data protection requirement, you have a regulatory requirement, you have your own due diligence. I think irrespective of what regulator asks, as an organization, I think we have to be responsible enough for a data protection strategy itself. So what is Mr. Sudhir, from a CRO perspective, what are your views around this subject?
I think I quite agree with Mr. Balram that you can't forget the basics when you automate, when you move to cloud, or when you adopt latest technologies. But at the same time, I agree with him also that automation is key. And therefore, increased use of technology-based controls, which actually matches the speed that business requires. So the challenge is the speed that business requires. The challenge is that you stick to basics. You don't miss the ABCD of security. And the challenge is that you maintain data confidentiality, data integrity, data storage, and when you talk about regulations, localization of data. So all these are very important, and these are challenges. And therefore, when you move on to new environments, you must do a program change practice. You must look at what would happen in the development area. You must look at the impact of the change, and then study that. A data flow diagram has to be done. See what's the inputs, output process, and side effects of the change, and then move to premises. Or move on to cutover. So look at basics now. So data integrity. Now you'll have to look at permissions very carefully and move on to least privileges. So do not give data or rights or system accesses the way we used to do in the past or a decade back. It should be the other way around. Don't give data or privileges or rights unless it's required. So which is moving on to zero trust. Similarly, localization of data. Data regulations are applied where data is physically stored, collected, and used. In distribution systems of modern times, this is very difficult to map and control. So how do you do the data flow is a challenge by itself. Where is the data localized is a challenge. Have you left some data in some devices of the employee at homes? How do you regulate that is a challenge. Data confidentiality is a challenge. Ensuring data is secured according to the level of confidentiality requires properly restricting permissions and applying encryption methods to ensure data is not accessed. So maybe you encrypt all the remote data or data that is lying around in employees' houses. Data storage, again, since cloud infra is entirely controlled by third-party vendor, organizations have no option but to rely on the vendor's security. Then we'll have to look at vendors audit, vendor privileges, vendor storage, vendor confidentiality. So the vendor's location and the fourth party where vendor depends upon, all that would become part of the perimeter, which means you increased surveillance, increased BCP review, increased information security, review of the third party, fourth party. So the list goes on, and therefore the challenges will be much more complex. And of course, in some cases, not measurable, but we will have to ensure your basic practices, change management practices, data flow diagrams are swift, are again agile, and are also up to date. And that's a challenge for traditional security practitioners or perimeter-based security practitioners to update with the data flow changes, the process flow changes, and ensure the regulatory requirements in terms of localization of data, etc., are met. And therefore, all this requires a better strategy of data protection, which is moving on to zero trust. But zero trust is more an idea that is like a utopia sometimes because of technology complexities. So it's very difficult to achieve zero trust. It's not easy. You don't have applications in many, many areas in financial services that sort of gives you zero trust, but that gives you excellent flexibility. So mapping up to various challenges of flexibility, security, confidentiality, and ensuring data flow is the key challenge. But having said that, the boards today, the risk management professionals today are more agile, better aware of security requirements, and more disciplined. It's not that they push people to the wall and say, but must be done. There are challenges and people are willing to live with that. And if there is a delay of a day or two or a week, they're willing to live with that change, because if the change is required to be practiced in a proper manner, it has to be done. These things are met, and board actually asks questions on these. So things have changed. There's better governance. But having said that, the complexities have changed. The challenges of the environment is tougher, and more and more hacking happens, and you're left to practical challenges.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Sunder. I think very crisply put in terms of how the challenges translate from a business standpoint, and how technology being the ground, the underbelly, which is where the business rides over the technology, and the business controls needs to be ensured along with the technical security controls. I think extending the same question, I think we have another a very prolific speaker here who comes from HealthAssure. Raje. We have with about the earlier perspective, or extend your conversation, whatever questions you have. If a business, new pandemic environment or post-pandemic environment, the work from era is something which you need to really touch upon. And I would like you to talk about, with the work from home era, the new data protection strategy, how the industries like you, yours, would really like to have views around that.
Oh, thank you, Satyan. I think it's a great, valid and a pertinent question in terms of the new normal that we are experiencing as of now. And there are a lot of changes which we have seen in the regulatory framework as well, whether it is the Indian IT Act And especially from the healthcare standpoint and the pharma standpoint, there are a lot of laws and regulations which have been drawn, changed, modified. Typically, the high-tech HIPAA laws, HL7 guidelines, they've all undergone changes. Even the ISO guidelines have changed. So how does one ensure that they are keeping themselves abreast with this new technological guidelines and regulations which have come up? It is a very pertinent question in terms of we have to do a lot of research in terms of making sure that we are compliant, especially the GDPR laws as well. Those who are getting transported beyond the Indian subcontinent of what is care spectrum is concerned. And as a result of which, there have been a lot of changes that have been brought in. Initially, what used to happen is when we used to kind of get this needs and requirements as far as the compliance is concerned, there used to be a lot of debate between within the board.
I think we are losing Ninad.
Difficult and challenging for
I
any
would,
technology leader. Investments from both sides of creep in. And as a result of which, there is another flip side to that. Whilst the challenge of investments getting from the board, there's an advantage in that perspective. However, there's a flip side wherein more and more security that we bring in, less and less business kind of sort of is done, because the flexibility in the business gets sort of overshadowed. You know, there's a constant tussle as of now between the business, because the business wants flexibility, the business wants to make sure that it is an appropriate sort of easier and ease of experience, whilst the security leader wants to clamp down always, you know. So there's a tussle going on there. However, at the end of it, I think it's a win-win situation. Security leaders are concerned. We cannot compromise security nowadays. In fact, we cannot impact us. So having said that, I think one takeaway from this is make sure that we clamp down, make sure that we appropriately build the resiliency in the system. However, at the same time, provide the flexibility to a business to transact appropriately and go forward. Over to you, back to you, Satyam.
I think thanks, Ninad, for summarizing this entire perspective in terms of clamping down, and that the philosophy remains the same. I think the way Mr. Balram has mentioned of sticking to basics, way Mr. Sunder Krishnan provided a perspective in terms of having the same sticking to basics would remain even from a data protection strategy perspective. So being an on-prem or being a cloud or being a work from home, the trust and verify concept still remains. I think I would not take much time. I would leave this session open for questions. If any of the delegates have questions for any of our panelists, considering the two environments of two themes of business environment and security, we would be really happy. The panelists would be very happy to answer all those questions. I think by the time we wait for the questions to come, I just also wanted to touch upon this subject of work from home, which is typically being adapted, which is totally being, a more of a concept, which I think every organization has adapted, and the threat vectors have accordingly changed, and the established connections which are from outside in. I think that scenario we had already discussed thoroughly. But I also wanted to touch upon, and I wanted to come to Mr. Sunder Krishnan sir, asking whether do you see going forward how this business would change? Means, do you think the on-premise concept would go away and we will have all the holes punched into the network, the firewalls, and we will have more connections coming from outside to the organization to the inside? How do you see, sir? In the meantime, when the questions come up, we can. I wanted to your perspective.
I think the environment would, at least for the next 10 years, would continue to be hybrid. It can't be totally remote. Because on-prem is also important in terms of meetings, in terms of personalization, in terms of business transactions, etc. Of course, it depends on culture and style of the organization, the business that the organization is in. Supposing you have an online business which requires more real-time access, then naturally the drift would be towards remote. But if you do not have online business, but you have offline businesses, which also is still a major part of businesses of many organizations, it would mean on-premises and it would mean coming to corporate office. So I think organizations are looking at 2 days in the remote, 4 days or 3 days in the office, and combos like that, and probably reduce space and rationalize space, save on costs. I think this is the approach that organizations are looking at. Until, of course, the technology itself changes and enables on-prem, on-touch for real-time video images being forwarded and conversations happening through video images. We haven't come to that stage yet. And therefore, till that stage comes and still till the businesses are not fully online, we would look at on-premises. And that's where, but having said that, definitely all organizations are looking at working from home, remote access, because it's a means to save cost, means to work better, means to extract better work from the employee, especially if there are monitoring tools and vigilances that are there. Of course, it would mean tremendous challenges to the risk and security and automation requirements.
Thanks for this wonderful words, Mr. Sunder. I think the transformation, what this post-pandemic has brought, is going to sustain. I think this journey is going to sustain. I think all the panelists would agree that this transformation journey is going to be an everlasting challenge, because the business dynamics is going to totally change now. How organizations have adapted to this post-pandemic environment is not a one-time change. It is going to be a sustainable change. I think this is what I would say is a more of a summary what all of the panelists have acknowledged, and more of this progressive journey and how this could be new securities, technologies, or new risk methodologies could be adapted to future-proof the organization is something is the proof of the pudding, where the time will only tell of how organizations are adapting to the new change. I think with these words, I would like to end this panel discussion. And I would thank, if at all, to all the panelists for providing great insights and providing the time to enrich this conversation. Thanks a lot.
Namaste, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Satya. Thank you indeed to all our panelists. Thank you for joining us this evening and for sharing some wonderful thoughts and for being part of the summit. Thank you once again.
Thank you.